Xie Sui'an woke up after a chaotic night, only to discover a secret that was about to turn his entire life upside down. The most terrifying part was not the nightmare about the giant snake. It was how real it had felt. A single drink at a company gathering pushed the relationship between two workplace rivals far beyond anyone's expectations. The next morning, Xie Sui'an found two mysterious objects on his bed, and he had absolutely no memory of what had happened. While Xie Sui'an struggled to hide his secret, Zhang Yu discovered an even more frightening truth. As the clues slowly began to connect, Xie Sui'an realized that the two eggs might be linked to the person he hated most. Just when Xie Sui'an thought he was finally getting everything under control, the person standing at his door turned out to be Zhang Yu, and when both of them lost control, Xie Sui'an began to wonder, was this really just an accident? Or was it fate? Xie Sui'an woke up after a night of lost memories and discovered the strangest thing that had ever happened to him. On his bed lay two snake eggs, resting there as if they had always belonged there. For several seconds, Xie Sui'an's brain completely refused to process reality. He began to question everything, including himself, because if these eggs really had something to do with him, then things had gone far beyond the limits of reason. But no matter what, Xie Sui'an still had to go to work. Even as an Omega, he had always believed that he was no less capable than any Alpha, until that man appeared, Zhang Yu. The perfect Alpha. Xie Sui'an's greatest rival, the man who had beaten him time and time again, and today, Zhang Yu had just taken the most important project of the quarter. Reluctantly, Xie Sui'an raised his glass to congratulate the person he disliked the most, but the moment their eyes met, Zhang Yu suddenly froze. No one understood what was happening, except that only a few seconds later, a glass crashed onto the floor. Zhang Yu suddenly lost control. He pushed everyone aside and rushed out of the party. Angry and confused, Xie Sui'an eventually decided to follow him. In the restroom, Zhang Yu was struggling against something erupting within his body, and then he caught a familiar scent. It was Xie Sui'an's pheromones. Meanwhile, Xie Sui'an had no idea that he was walking straight into a dangerous situation. He only wanted to help his rival get some rest, but the look in Zhang Yu's eyes had changed. It was no longer the look of a rival, nor was it the look of a colleague. In the next moment, Zhang Yu suddenly grabbed Xie Sui'an's hand, then he pulled him close, as if holding on to the most important thing in the world, and when Xie Sui'an trembled and whispered, "Don't," he still had no idea that this moment would change his entire life. Xie Sui'an used all his strength to push Zhang Yu away, but it was already too late. His greatest rival had left behind something that could never simply be ignored. Xie Sui'an fled the party, carrying with him a mix of panic and indescribable anger. At that moment, only one thought remained in his mind. Why did it have to be Zhang Yu? Before falling asleep, Xie Sui'an swore that he would settle the score with him the next day. But that night, the first thing that came to him was not the truth. It was a strange dream. In the darkness, a giant snake slowly approached him. It wrapped itself around him, as if it had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Xie Sui'an wanted to run, but his body refused to obey him. Then a voice whispered right beside his ear. "Do you like it?" Xie Sui'an jolted awake. He tried to convince himself that it had only been a ridiculous nightmare, until he saw the two eggs still lying right beside him, and for the first time in his life, Xie Sui'an truly began to wonder if he was losing his mind. He decided to put the two eggs into his bag and get rid of them as soon as possible, because he absolutely refused to accept that he had anything to do with them. But fate seemed to enjoy playing tricks on Xie Sui'an. On his way to work, he realized that he was about to be late. Xie Sui'an rushed into the elevator just before the doors closed, and then, he saw the person he least wanted to meet, Zhang Yu. In the cramped space of the elevator, Xie Sui'an could only hope that time would pass as quickly as possible. But the moment he accidentally brushed against Zhang Yu, the other man unexpectedly stepped even closer, and for the first time since the previous night, Xie Sui'an began to realize that perhaps Zhang Yu still remembered everything. Xie Sui'an was pinned so close by Zhang Yu in the elevator that he nearly forgot how to breathe, but the strangest part was that Zhang Yu seemed completely unaware of what he had just done. The moment the elevator doors opened, Xie Sui'an immediately ran away. He rushed straight into the restroom, trying to calm himself down, and then he realized a terrifying truth. His body was becoming far too sensitive to Zhang Yu's pheromones. Xie Sui'an quickly put on a pheromone blocker patch and told himself to stay as far away from Zhang Yu as possible. Yet, the more he tried to avoid him, the more often he kept running into Zhang Yu. From the office hallway to the coffee station, it was as if fate was deliberately mocking him. Meanwhile, Zhang Yu also began to realize that Xie Sui'an was trying to avoid him, but what troubled him even more were the memories of the previous night. Zhang Yu called in his subordinates and asked them to recount everything that had happened after the party. However, the answers he received only left him even more confused. According to everyone else, he had been taken home immediately after getting drunk. Then what exactly were those vague memories still lingering in his mind? Alone in his office, Zhang Yu suddenly realized something even more terrifying. His essence had disappeared, and that was something that should have been impossible. Soon after, Zhang Yu sought out an elder of the Serpent Clan, but the elder's reaction was even more shocking than he had expected, because among the Serpent Clan, one's essence only leaves the body after a lifelong mate has been identified, and under the influence of pheromones, that essence would transform into snake eggs. That meant that somewhere in this world, there existed 2 eggs carrying Zhang Yu's bloodline, and if they were not properly cared for, they would not survive. At the same time, after a chaotic day at work, Xie Sui'an returned home and treated himself to a good dinner, but when he casually pulled back the blanket on his bed, the 2 familiar eggs appeared before his eyes once again, as if they had never left. That night, Xie Sui'an was once again drawn into the same strange dream. He walked into an empty room, yet the feeling of being watched grew stronger and stronger. Then, a snake's tail appeared. It wrapped around his leg and pulled him to the ground. Xie Sui'an struggled to break free, but his body refused to obey him. And then, the person who appeared before him was Zhang Yu. In that dream, Zhang Yu looked at him with an expression he had never seen in real life. He was no longer a rival. Nor was he a colleague. What remained was a dangerous presence that made Xie Sui'an want to wake up immediately. But the more he tried to escape, the more real the dream became. Until Xie Sui'an suddenly woke up in the middle of the night, his back soaked with cold sweat. He began to wonder if something was truly wrong with him, because this was already the 3rd time Zhang Yu had appeared in his dreams, and every time, it involved those strange snakes. As he looked at the 2 eggs beside him, a frightening thought suddenly crossed his mind. Could they really have something to do with Zhang Yu? But even Xie Sui'an felt that the idea was too absurd to believe. The next morning, he arrived at work, looking as though he had barely slept. At that very moment, Zhang Yu greeted him as if nothing had ever happened. Xie Sui'an tried to stay calm, but his mind was still filled with the dreams from the night before. Finally, he gathered all his courage and asked a strange question. Recently, have you happened to lose something? But Zhang Yu's confusing reaction made Xie Sui'an regret asking almost immediately. Maybe he really had been overthinking everything. Or worse, maybe he was the one with the problem. Just then, President Zhou suddenly called both of them to his office. Xie Sui'an assumed this would be yet another competition between the 2 of them, but he had no idea that President Zhou's next decision would force him and Zhang Yu onto the same path of fate. Xie Sui'an had thought that working on a project with Zhang Yu was already bad enough. But then President Zhou announced something even more terrifying. Not only did the 2 of them have to work together, but neither of them was allowed to refuse. If they failed, their bonus for the next month would disappear. Xie Sui'an immediately surrendered to reality. He tried to focus on work and told himself that he just had to finish this project. But the more he worked, the more unusual his body began to feel. The familiar heat that he had always managed to control arrived much earlier than expected, and this time, it was more intense than ever before. Xie Sui'an realized that things were slipping out of control. He quickly asked for leave and rushed home before anyone noticed. Meanwhile, Zhang Yu went looking for him at his office. And for the first time, genuine concern appeared on Zhang Yu's face. When he learned that Xie Sui'an had gone home because he was not feeling well, he immediately volunteered to deliver the documents himself. At the same time, Xie Sui'an was struggling alone against the growing discomfort. His medication still had not arrived, and time was running out. Then, the doorbell suddenly rang. Xie Sui'an forced himself to stand, believing it was the delivery person. But when he opened the door, the person standing outside was Zhang Yu. With just a single glance, Zhang Yu immediately understood his condition. Xie Sui'an tried to remain calm, but even standing upright had become difficult. And when he lost his balance, Zhang Yu caught him without hesitation. In that moment, with the distance between them becoming dangerously close, Xie Sui'an realized a terrifying truth. The one person he least wanted to be near right now might also be the only person who could help him. Xie Sui'an could not understand why Zhang Yu had said that he could help him, but at that very moment, the 2 mysterious eggs in the room suddenly began to glow faintly. A familiar yet strange and dangerous sensation spread throughout Xie Sui'an's body. The distance between him and Zhang Yu seemed to grow smaller and smaller, and just as everything was about to spiral out of control, the sound of a delivery bell rang from outside the door. Xie Sui'an immediately snapped back to his senses and pushed Zhang Yu away. He told himself that what had just happened was only the result of temporarily losing control. No matter what, the man standing before him was still Zhang Yu, the rival he hated the most. Yet Xie Sui'an quickly took his medication and forced Zhang Yu to stay outside the door. He believed that as long as he took the medicine, everything would return to normal. But few minutes later, the heat inside his body still had not faded. In fact, it had become even more intense. Outside the door, Zhang Yu was also struggling with a strange and unsettling sensation. Xie Sui'an's pheromones were beginning to shake his self-control. As he struggled to endure it, Xie Sui'an once again slipped into a state between consciousness and unconsciousness. In his hallucination, the person standing before him was still Zhang Yu, and this time, he was no longer sure what was real and what was not. As Xie Sui'an tried to deny everything, but his body refused to listen to his reason. As he lost his balance, a pair of arms caught him just in time. Looking at the person leaning against him, Jiang Yu lost his usual composure for the very first time, because at that moment, even he no longer knew what he was supposed to do next. Do you think Xie Sui'an should trust Jiang Yu? And what exactly are those two mysterious eggs? Share your theories in the comments below. If you enjoy fantasy BL stories filled with drama, mystery, and unexpected twists, do not forget to like and subscribe. We will see you in the next part, where Jiang Yu's biggest secret is finally about to be revealed.